Welcome to our 5 on 5. We're pleased to be joined today by Oregon Community Foundation President and CEO Max Williams. Max, thank you so much for taking the time joining us.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity, Craig. Thanks for having me.
As well known as OCF is in the state, I imagine not all our viewers know what the foundation does. Can you give us a brief summary, a rundown?
Sure. The Oregon Community Foundation is, for almost 50 years, been a statewide community foundation that works with generous Oregonians who create funds to help nonprofits and individuals all over the state.
And OCF has been very instrumental in helping Oregon recover from last September's tragic fires. What is the status of the Community Rebuilding Fund today?
Sure. Thanks for the question. You know, the Oregon Community Rebuilding Fund was a joint effort by the Oregon Community Foundation and our partners at the Ford Family Foundation and the Meyer Memorial Trust to establish a fund that wasn't so much focused on the immediate and emergency response, but really focused on building charitable dollars for long-term response to communities. Our goal has been to raise at least $10 million for that fund, and we're relatively close to that number at this point. And just in this last couple of weeks, we've opened a grant-making process for that fund where organizations around Oregon in fire-impacted communities can actually submit grant requests to start receiving rebuilding dollars from that fund. And so that process is underway right now, and I'd really encourage people and organizations to go to the OCF website to find out more information about how to actually access those resources.
Very good. And can you speak specifically to any of the work going on here in Jackson County after the Alameda and South Obanchain fires?
Well, you know, there's been a ton of work, not just by the Oregon Community Foundation, but by a number of organizations who are working on help and restoration in this area. First and foremost, perhaps the number one issue that we know is being impacted by people is housing. I'd say second to that has been issues around needing to provide additional emotional and mental health support resources for a community that's really been stretched in so many ways. And so we expect that the dollars that will come out of this fund will be primarily directed, at least initially, to some of those immediate needs as organizations in the community come forward. I think for us, the thing that's been important, not only working in these communities here in Jackson County, but across the state, has really been focused on trying to listen to what we're hearing from the community about what those needs are, and then making these resources available to respond specifically to those needs.
All right, very good, Max. Thank you. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll have much more in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to our 5 on 5. Again, we're here with Oregon Community Foundation President and CEO Max Williams. Max, the Oregon legislature allocated a total of $65 million for Project Turnkey. Its purpose, in case anybody doesn't remember, is acquiring motels or hotels for use as non-congregate shelter for people experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. OCF, your organization, is administering these funds. What's the biggest challenge you've seen so far?
Well, I think, you know, trying to get it off the ground in a quick period of time. I'm pleased to say that in the 7 months since we received the funds, we've been able to allocate the full $65 million to projects all around the state, increasing shelter beds in Oregon by nearly 25%, which maybe is a thing to say challenging about the number of shelter beds that have been currently available for people in need. It was broken in, as you know, into two separate segments. One focused on fire-impacted communities and counties, and that's some of what we've done obviously here in Jackson County. And then the second amount was broken out in balance of state to really provide non-congregate shelter housing, particularly during the COVID period of time. So we've worked with a number of communities. I think the challenge has been getting the communities to come together, both county and cities, nonprofit organizations sort of organizing themselves to be able to tip these shelters up in a short period of time and provide services. And I'm pleased to say that I think the legislature has approved and the governor will approve an additional $9.7 million that will come in that will help us clear out the last 3 projects that are in the pipeline, which will bring us to nearly 20 projects around Oregon where we've been able to provide these additional shelter beds with great work by the community organizations who have taken the lead on the ground.
And I know you know, but our viewers may not know, we do have those facilities in Medford, Ashland, Klamath Falls, Douglas County, and North Bend. How do our Southern Oregon facilities compare to the rest of the state?
Well, one thing I'll say is that your organizations were able to mobilize pretty quickly. We're proud, and I hope you are too, that the very first one to come off out of the chute was in Ashland. Since then, We've seen the others that you've described come together. I think each one is uniquely different. The population that the homeless population that they're intended to serve is maybe a little unique in each of those counties, and each one has its own flavor, and each one has its own long-term objectives. It really works at a community-based level to determine how these projects will move forward once we're past housing people as a result of the fires, or in some cases move past the need for non-congregate COVID housing. So I think each one of these will develop a little bit differently, but this was a great investment of state resources. The average unit being built right now in the Portland metropolitan area for non-congregate housing like this is coming in about $400,000 a door, and the average for these transformations of these motels and hotels into shelter housing is averaging about $85,000 a door. So it was a really solid investment, I think, for these resources to build this permanent stock of housing for homeless individuals all over the state.
Well, it is some incredible work. Max, thank you so much for taking the time while you're in town.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Craig.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.